Something happened in Washington that hasn't happened in over a year. A bipartisan coalition in the House gathered 218 signatures, the magic number, to force a vote on the Ukraine Support Act, new sanctions on Russia, billions in military aid for Kyiv, 500% tariffs on Russian goods. And they did it over the objections of the Speaker, the White House, and the Republican leadership. This is the first major pro-Ukraine legislation since Donald Trump took office for the second time. And the reason it's happening now goes back to one very, very specific promise Trump made on a debate stage in 2024. A promise that broke the most basic rule of politics. Before I explain what I mean, hit like. It helps more than you think. And if you want this kind of breakdown every week, subscribe. And don't forget about my Substack. All right, now let's get back to it and talk about that rule of politics. Politicians usually do not make promises with deadlines. They say things like, it's a priority. They say they'll fight for something. They keep it vague. Like, make America great again. It's genius, because everyone fills in their own version of what great means. It's a feeling, an emotion, not a metric. Nobody can fact-check a feeling. But I will end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours after taking office. That's a clock. People are either still being killed or they're not. There's no spin. There's no, well, it depends on how you define 24 hours. Come on, this was 18 months ago.
I would tell Putin, you got to settle. I would tell Zelensky, you got to settle. I would tell one, you're going to load up with money. I'd tell the other, you're not going to get any money. I would get a settlement in 24 hours.
And for a while, it looked like President Trump might actually achieve something. He reestablished dialogue with Putin. He sent envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to negotiate. There were rounds and rounds of bilateral and trilateral talks. The US, Russia, and Ukraine in Geneva in February. The follow-up was scheduled for Abu Dhabi in March. Then the Iran war started on February 28th. And Ukraine just fell off Trump's desk. The talks were postponed, then postponed again, then quietly shelved. The Kremlin has publicly confirmed the peace process is on pause. And frankly, that suits Moscow just fine. Stalling is Russia's strategy always. 24 hours became 24 days, became 24 weeks, became a year and a half. And there is no result. And this is why Congress just moved. Here's how Washington works on foreign policy. When a president says, I've got this, Congress backs off. Even members who disagree will hesitate to undercut a president from their own party. The president leads, Congress defers. But that only works if the president is actually leading somewhere. And the numbers right now tell the story. Pew Research found that only 32% of Americans are confident that Trump can make good decisions about the war in Ukraine. And another number, 4 in 10 Republicans do not trust their own president on Ukraine. When you're a House Republican looking at the midterms in November, that number is a permission slip. It tells you that breaking with Trump on Ukraine is no longer political suicide. On the contrary, it might be actually political survival. Because every one of those House members is on the ballot in 5 months. And Democrats hold a 10-point advantage, while Trump's overall approval is in mid-30s. Well, so signing the discharge petition isn't just about Ukraine. For someone like Brian Fitzpatrick in suburban Philadelphia or Kevin Kiley in California, it's a chance to show voters they can think independently, that they don't just follow orders from their president who promised results and delivered nothing. In a midterm year where being a generic Republican is a liability, being the Republican who stood up for Ukraine might be the smartest move on the board. And listen how Kylie framed it. It's great. He didn't say he was opposing the president. No. He framed it as if he was helping the president. He said that recent Ukrainian gains have created an opportunity for peace. But the collapse of the ceasefire proves that leverage is needed for diplomacy to succeed. Well, he's saying out loud what everyone in Washington knows. Talking hasn't worked, and Congress has tools that the White House refuses to use. And those tools are serious. It's not a symbolic resolution. The Ukraine Support Act would authorize over $1 billion in direct assistance to Ukraine and up to $8 billion more through loans. It would impose major new sanctions on Russian banks, oil companies, and mining firms. It would create a special coordinator for Ukraine reconstruction, and it extends the military Lend-Lease program that started under Biden. The vote is expected in early June, right after the Memorial Day recess. It will very likely pass the House. The 218 signatures tell you that the votes are there. The Senate is harder, way harder. It needs 60 votes. That's too high of a bar. But even if it stalls there, the message matters. Well, it doesn't matter as much as the outcome, but it matters. Trump's own party is going on the record to say, your approach has failed. You were wrong. But here's what I think Trump got wrong from the very beginning. It's not a political mistake, it's a psychological one. Trump looked at Putin and saw a version of himself, a deal maker, a man who wants access, status, money, leverage, great projects. Trump genuinely believed he could offer Putin things no other president would. Economic partnerships, Arctic cooperation, energy deals, a seat back at the table. And if the price was right, Putin would take the deal and walk away from Ukraine. That's how President Trump thought. Well, he saw it as a transaction. He thought that it has a number. But let's remember one thing. In 2022, Elon Musk was asked how it felt to be the richest man on earth. His answer was, I think that Putin is significantly richer than me. He didn't elaborate on it, but in the same interview, he said, we cannot let Putin take over Ukraine. It's crazy. But there is an even more revealing quote. Putin himself was once asked about his wealth. And he said, I'm quoting here a book of a New York Times reporter, Stephen Lee Myers. He wrote a book about Putin. So Putin apparently said, I'm the wealthiest man, not just in Europe, but in the whole world, because I collect emotions. End quote. He collects emotions, not dollars, not deals, emotions. What's emotions? Power. Probably power. He collects power. You cannot buy off a man like that with Arctic drilling rights. Ukraine is not a negotiating position he'll trade away for a better financial package. It's the obsession, the legacy project of his entire rule. He has spent 26 years, hundreds of thousands of lives, and whatever is left of Russia's international standing on this. And he's far too stubborn to stop now because an American president waved some money and some projects around. Trump assumed he could buy his way out of this war. He couldn't. And now, 18 months later, Congress is stepping in. Well, not with deals, but with pressure. And for the Republicans who signed that discharge petition, standing up on Ukraine while the president sat it out may turn out to be the best political decision they make all year. The vote is in June. I'll surely be covering it. And I'll see you in the next one.